The Bad Crypto Podcast is brought to you by our friends at eToro. Check out the new Copy Trader feature that allows you to follow successful traders and do what they do with no effort. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can get $25 in free Bitcoin from Travis and myself. Go to badco.in/eToro for details. That's badco.in/eToro. Are the Winklevoss twins the lunk-headed jocks portrayed in the film The Social Network? As author of The Accidental Billionaires, the book that became the inspiration for the film, Ben Mezrich has revisited his initial beliefs about the Winklevi and Mark Zuckerberg and reveals all as he tells the story of what happened next in his new book, Bitcoin Billionaires. Today, Ben joins us to share stories from his new book and gives us his impressions of who Cameron and Tyler really are. The book also features former guests of this show, including Roger Ver and Charlie Shrem. It's truly a must-read for all crypto enthusiasts, which makes this interview with Ben a must-listen. The spirit of Bitcoin compels you. So gather round as we tell tall tales of the crypto Old West in episode number 288 of the Bad Crypto Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, ignition.
Who's bad?
Gather around the campfire here, little uns. It's the Bad Crypto Podcast, and we've got some yarns. We've got some yarns to tell here, matey. And somehow I went from becoming a cowboy to a pirate there in Nothing Flat, Mr. Travis Wright.
Howdy, cowboy pirates.
Yar!
Yar! Yar!
It is indeed the show for the crypto curious, the crypto serious, and the crypto ridiculous. I'm Joel Comm. He's Travis Wright, and how you doing?
I'm doing. How you doing? You all doing? They're doing. That's good.
It's all good. You know what else is doing, Mr. Travis Wright?
Our show's NASGO.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go, NASGO. NASGO is the GoDaddy of blockchain, as they say. Very handy to tokenize basically any business without any coding required. You don't have to be a cold-blooded killer, but it's good. So they've developed basically the easiest solution for businesses to transition into the blockchain world. And so they're easy to use NASGO wallet, online wallet. They also have a mobile wallet, provides all the tools you need to advance your business without breaking the bank. They also have some other stuff. They're like, the Miko and some other things that got going on. So once you start diving down the rabbit hole, you're going to have some fun learning about what all they do. So NASGO provides the essential foundation to sidechain with all kinds of APIs such as database writing, network communication, encryption, and the sidechain supplies more nodes to strengthen the whole NASGO system. We talked about this on badco.in/282. But you can go check it out right now at nasgo.com.
Let's go, NASGO. Yeah, you mentioned the new app. They've got a suite of apps that are pretty sweet. And, in the future, we're going to be telling you more about these guys and what it means practically to you as a business person and how they intend to make it super easy for anyone.
And not even a business person, but like an influencer. If you're an influencer or you have an audience of your own, maybe you have your YouTube channel or you're big on Instagram or whatever, and you just want to offer a token and offer different ways for people to interact with you and buy stuff. And I think this could be big for loyalty. There could be a whole lot. This has a whole lot of potential. Should be interesting to take a look at that.
It might save the world.
It might not. We're not making any financial recommendations other than go check it out. Do your own due diligence.
And we're also going to make this recommendation that you should listen to everything Ben Mezrich says. This is one cool dude. I loved this interview, Travis, and I loved his book.
For sure, yeah. No, not only has he written, 20-something books or something crazy, like he's written so many different books. He's written more books than Mr. Joel Comm, and many of them have become movies. And the thought about this is, pick up the book if you like to read. If you love fiction, right? This book reads like it's fiction, but it's a real story. He has a great way of telling a story. And imagine this. The rights to this book, Bitcoin Billionaires, has been picked up and he says it will become a movie in 2020. Can you imagine what this could do for Bitcoin in 2020 when the movie gets debuted?
It could be huge,
Seriously?
huge. I've actually set up
Would be
a link
ginormous.
for you guys to go get the book at Amazon, badco.in/Ben. But right now, open your ears and listen in to this interview about Bitcoin billionaires. Mr. Travis Wright, did you see the film The Social Network?
I did. I saw that film, and I also saw the film 21.
Yeah, well, both of those films are Hollywoodized screenplay adaptions of books written by our guest here today, Mr. Ben Mezrich. He's had a writing career of almost 20 years now. He's written 20 books, which is 5 more than me, so I got to catch up. But his books have sold over 4 million copies. The book Bringing Down the House was the story about the MIT students who went to Vegas and took Vegas for millions. That became the film 21 with Kevin Spacey. And then his book, The Accidental Billionaires, is all about the founders of Facebook. That became the film The Social Network. Well, he's got a new book out that I could not put down. I read it, I think, over a period of 2 days. It's called Bitcoin Billionaires, and it is all about the Winklevoss Twins, or the Winklevi as we affectionately refer to them here, and the real story behind what's going on. Ben, welcome to Bad Crypto.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So, my first question is Mark Zuckerberg really as much of a dick as everything makes him out to be?
A robotic dick. Well, I will say that his own instant messages, which, have been out and they're in my book, they paint him pretty poorly. So in his own words, he can be very dickish. He definitely strategized to screw over the Winklevoss twins. And a lot of people who have worked with him over the years have ended up not working with him and saying bad things about him. So, he doesn't come off that well. But who knows what he's like, person to person. Maybe he's a very nice guy, but he is moving to destroy the world as we know it. So,
well, I guess, Ben, in The Social Network, and I didn't read The Accidental Billionaires, so I don't know how the screenplay adaptation might have changed things. But in the Accidental Billionaires, in the film The Social Network, Zuckerberg came out looking more like, the Wonder Kid,
right.
And the Winklevoss twins just kind of looked like dumb jocks. Would you revise that now, given the opportunity, based on what you wrote in Bitcoin Billionaires?
Yeah, and that's essentially what Bitcoin Billionaires is. It's sort of the redemption story. I definitely got them wrong. When I first met them in a hotel in New York, they looked like the bad guy in every 80s movie I'd ever seen, right? I mean, they're the guys in the skeleton costumes chasing the Karate Kid around the gym.
Sweep the leg.
Johnny, whatever his name is, the big blonde. Right, sweep the leg. And you definitely see that in the book and that movie, that they're portrayed as the alpha male, the guys, the establishment. And getting to know them now as I have, and with the Bitcoin sort of explosion, what they've been a part of, I've definitely changed my opinion of them. I mean, they're definitely much, much smarter than anyone had really known. And the fact that they're caricatures in that movie has more to do with how they look and where they come from than who they really are. And once you get to know them, they're pretty sharp, and you don't get to be a part of two revolutions by accident. And I think that's what this book is all about.
So Mr. Joel Comm could not could not put it down. I just got it a couple of days ago after he finished it, so I've just begun to pick it up, and I started reading through the first part where Cameron and had that big meeting with Mark Zuckerberg at that big long table, and we're trying to get that deal worked out. Now, one of my questions is this. So we've had conversations around Facebook, and Joel and I, we go down rabbit holes quite a little bit. And one of the things that's most interesting to me is that the NSA used to have this program called LifeLog. And LifeLog was meant to be what Facebook became. And LifeLog shut down on February 4th, 2004, the exact day Facebook was created. And so I wanted to ask you, in all your research, did you come across any of those correlations? Because, if you dive down that rabbit hole, it looks as if somehow,
here you are. It's Harvard. It's a big, Ivy League school, very prestigious. NSA has a lot of connections there. Could they have plucked the boy wonder in some way and then created this whole thing that basically tracks everything that we do now? That's Facebook, that we know it. Did you find any of that information when you were doing research on the book?
Well, listen, I love these rabbit holes, and it's a lot of fun. I had not even heard this story before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. Listen, there's lots of weird stuff that goes on in the world. I mean, my research doesn't show me that. I don't know anything about that. From
literally, Ben, the day before is when
the day of. Like, they shut it down on the 4th of February 2004, and Facebook was created on February 4th, 2004. To me, that was just like, that's just so weird.
That's very, very cool. Well, listen, the story that I got from being around all these people was that it was really Mark Zuckerberg, Eduardo, and Dustin Moskovitz sitting in the room, really trying to get girls, so it was much simpler than that. Whether, the government or the NSA or whatever organization you want to say has used Facebook over the years. Oh, I'm certain of that. I mean, there's no question that data trove is something that the NSA would be very hungry for and would have access to in a variety of ways. So certainly the back and forth, in that respect is very possible. But the founding of Facebook being sort of an NSA project or something like that was not something I've ever seen or heard of. I mean, these guys were just trying to get laid. Let's be honest. Mark Zuckerberg was not good at girls. And there was a MySpace, there was a Friendster, there were all these things, but they were kind of failing or not really succeeding. And the Winklevoss twins had a website where you had concentric circles of friends and sort of the idea that you had to have a Harvard email to get on it, which made it exclusive, which also made it your personal page, which was very different than MySpace. That's what Mark Zuckerberg borrowed on and grew from. What it became later, which is this massive data trove that could be used for any variety of things, you can get into a lot of questions about that. But in the origin story, I mean, I like where you're going. I've just never seen anything like that.
Well, that'll be your next rabbit hole that you're probably going to be like, wait.
Look, if someone told me that story and it was the kind of thing that I could research, sure, it's fun. I love conspiracy.
It's called LifeLog, and it was the project the NSA had created. They'd been working on it, and then all of a sudden, they didn't say why they shelved it. They just said, "All right, we're shelving it. We're closing it." Boom, and then Facebook was created the same day. That to me was one of those things that just tingles the spidey senses a bit.
That's cool. I'd have to look into it and see. Yeah,
maybe write a book about it.
I think Tom, Tom was getting all the chicks, right, at MySpace, and that. Think about all the ways that you can attract women. I know, guys. I'm going to go in my dorm room and I'm going to code this super nerdy thing, and I'm going to get girls. I mean,
it's amazing, right? But it ended up changing the whole social world. It's all online now. That is how you meet girls now. So listen, everyone of the younger generation right now thinks nothing of meeting people on Facebook or even on their phone or whatever. And that's something that Mark Zuckerberg was a very big part of.
We're swipeable now. You're either swipe left or right.
It created a world where guys like Mark Zuckerberg were attractive. And that's something where you get into the Winklevoss twins. And, I remember talking, I think it was Tyler, who said, between us and the Winklevoss, us and Mark Zuckerberg, who do you think created a social network? And so, it's a different thing. It's a different setting. So it's pretty fascinating.
The light went on for it. It's like you could see that, because wasn't it like he registered the domain, the Facebook, like before their third meeting? Like, so like they'd already had two meetings where they've opened up the kimono, right?
Right. He led them along. He pretended that he was working for them. He even wrote emails to his friends or instant messages to his friends, which are in Bitcoin Billionaires, where he's basically like, I'm gonna F these guys in the ear. I'm gonna lead them along, and then at the last minute do it so they have no time to do anything. And so he launched Facebook without telling them, while they thought he was still working for them.
Douche move, bro. Douche move.
Well,
total douche canoe.
Interesting. I've talked to people both in business. And businessmen don't find there be a big problem with this. They see this is a business move. You don't tell the people what you're doing. They had no legal contract disallowing him to do this. So he did it. And ethically, it's poor sport, And there's that famous quote of his that's also in the book where he says, I like to live myself legally, but not ethically, or something like that. I don't know specific words, but he really didn't have a problem with it. I think the biggest thing with the Winklevoss twins is these guys don't really care about money, and they don't care about, the fame and that stuff. What they really care about is being cheated or being lied to. These are the things that are really important to them. And they felt very strongly that Zuckerberg had screwed them purposefully. If he had just come to them and said, listen, I have an idea. I want to launch this website. It's not, your website. It's something else. There wouldn't have ever been a problem. And it's just the lying and the duplicitousness that these are 1950s kind of guys. I mean, these are guys who grew up with right and wrong, and you get knocked down and you get back up, and very conservative philosophies, I think. And just being screwed over by this guy is what really set them on this path.
Well, but that path took them down, on a really great journey that still the book is writing itself right now, because,
Right.
we as they believe that crypto is the future. And this story, really focuses on Cameron and Tyler, but you've also got some ancillary characters in there, two of which we've had on previous episodes of the show, Charlie Shrem and Roger Ver. We've not had Eric Voorhees on the show. He's not wanted to join us for whatever reason. Maybe he thinks we're really too bad. I don't know, but really interesting reading, more in depth, because I learned more from your book than I did from our own interviews with them. You really flesh out these characters. I mean, Roger is this total libertarian, maybe even anarchist, right, in his approach. And Charlie's just this kid who's, in his mom's basement and taps into Bitcoin and ends up in a heap of trouble.
Right. And Charlie, I'm fascinated by Charlie, and I have a lot of sympathy for Charlie. I spent a lot of time with him. And when he read the book, I was nervous what he was going to think of it, because it definitely shows him warts and all, with the pot smoking and with the sort of getting caught up, ending up in jail, and his family troubles and all of this. But he called me up and said it made him cry, because it captured his story in a lot of ways. And Charlie was a kid, he was a young 18, 19-year-old kid in his mother's basement who stumbled into Bitcoin, as many people did, saw something there and created a company which helped you buy Bitcoin. And then he starts getting pulled by the Roger Vers of the world, the libertarian philosophy that drugs are good. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. Do what you want. And he allowed people, or at least one guy, to buy Bitcoin from him and then use it to buy drugs on Silk Road. And that is a big no-no. The federal government looks poorly on companies that do that knowingly. And he got in trouble. And what's fascinating to me is you also have the Winklevoss twins, who are his other investors, who are straight-laced, who are the guys in suits, who are not the guys who would ever be involved with Silk Road, and who see that as the dark background of Bitcoin that we have to get away from. And these are two very different philosophies. The Roger Vers of the world and the Eric Voorheeses of the world, who really think Bitcoin should be completely unregulated, completely free, bring down banks, bring down borders, bring down governments. And then you have, the Winklevoss twins, who think this is a financial instrument. This is gold. This is something that you want your mother to be able to invest in. And the only way to do that is some level of cooperation with the banking system and some level of regulation. And it's that thing that's tearing Bitcoin apart in the middle that really fascinates me, because it can't be both, And I think we're seeing that with Libra. We're seeing that at this moment right now with Trump tweeting about it and stuff like that. What is Bitcoin? Is it gold, or is it the thing that takes down governments? And what do you want it to be? And, I don't know what your guys' personal philosophy on this is, but it's fascinating. Roger Ver and the Winklevoss twins playing in the same sandbox. It's wild to watch.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's unwrap that a little bit. So, you're in both worlds here. So you wrote The Accidental Billionaires around the founding of Facebook, and then now The Bitcoin Billionaires, which is talking about crypto, and now Facebook is having their own crypto. So, based on your research and what are your thoughts on Facebook Libra at this point?
Well, first of all, I truly believe there's something personal in this. I think there's no way it's a coincidence that it's called Libra and the Winklevoss twins launched Gemini.
Right.
I mean, come on. I wrote
Another
in
douche
Bitcoin,
move by Zuckerberg.
right? In Bitcoin Billionaires, I end the book with Zuckerberg sitting in his office contemplating how he can get at the Winklevoss twins by launching a crypto. And I wrote this a year before he launched Libra.
Nice.
He should have called it Taurus because it's all BS.
Right. I mean, they're very tied together, But I definitely think what Libra did initially was it was like an on-ramp. It's the idea that everyone is going to be comfortable with an electronic wallet is very good for Bitcoin. The idea that my mother can have an electronic wallet because she's on Facebook means that Bitcoin is really part of the mainstream in a big ways. On the other hand, Libra has a lot of problems. Libra, first of all, is run by these people who we don't trust with even our photos anymore. You're going to trust them with your bank account? And so there's that big aspect of it. And the other aspect,
I'm sorry, Ben. We didn't like that post you just said, so we've frozen your wallet for.
Right. I mean, seriously, who knows? Because they have control of all of that, and regardless of the fact that it's run by some charity, whatever they're calling it, in Switzerland or whatever, all of the big voices in there are these Silicon Valley billionaires who have a lot to gain from keeping control of that data. And so the idea that it's going to be free or whatever Libra is supposed to stand for is like Philip Morris saying, the cigarette is healthy, right? There's no way it stays free and healthy. And I do think, to Trump's favor with, he's come out saying Libra is dangerous and scary and they can't have their own bank. There's a lot to that. And that's what makes Bitcoin more important to me and bigger and greater, because Bitcoin isn't that, it isn't controlled by any company in the middle. And I think that's a big issue with Libra. And the idea of a digital coin that we can all use that's tied to $1, that makes a lot of sense. But we don't want Facebook to be the one doing it. And so it's intriguing. It's very intriguing. But I do think there's a personal point to this. I do think it's good for the crypto economy. And the timing for my book couldn't be better, right? It's right in the middle of this whole thing. But I trust Bitcoin more than I trust Zuckerberg.
So I'm curious about this. When did you personally really start, going down the crypto rabbit hole?
So this, first of all, I own no Bitcoin. I own no cryptocurrency. I just want to put that out there.
Well, that was great interviewing you. Thanks a lot for coming on, Ben.
And I'm a big fan of it. So basically, it was a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years now, that I saw, right in the newspaper in the New York Times that the Winklevoss twins were the first Bitcoin billionaires. And this kind of blew my mind because I'd written about these guys before. I never thought I'd write about them again. They were the bad guys in the story I wrote before. I'd stayed a little bit in touch with them, ran into them here and there. I knew they weren't thrilled with their portrayal, but they did love the movie, The Social Network. And they did love that they were positioned as these 1950s kind of hardworking rowers. And so they liked aspects of it. But I knew about Bitcoin because people have been pitching me Bitcoin stories because it's the kind of thing I write about. And so for years, I've been hearing about Bitcoin and pitched it, but I never wanted to write about it because I'm not a math guy. The whole word blockchain makes my eyes glaze over. I hate that word. I hate everything about, the whole crypto tech. Trying to write scenes about that is very hard because anytime you have someone sitting at a computer, everyone's eyes glaze over. You can't write action scenes like that. So I wasn't that interested in it as a book until I saw that it was the Winklevoss twins. And that is what blew my mind, these characters. And then I got into the Shakespearean drama of it. Hanging out with Charlie for 2 days makes you want to write a thriller because he's crazy, but he's likable, and he's an open book. And as I got deeper into the stories of these people, that's what really turned me onto it. So listen, I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. I think it is part of our future, but I'm not a financial investor in anything. I wrote the Facebook story and I didn't get rich off of Facebook, and I write the Bitcoin story. I'm not going to get rich off of Bitcoin. That's not my role. My role is to tell these origin stories and then, try and pick the story that's going to really be part of our future. And I do think Bitcoin and crypto and what the Winklevoss twins are trying to do, that's where we're going. 15 years from now, we're going to be paying for things with our phones and it's going to be instant and it's going to be over the internet. It's not going to be cash. It's not going to be US dollars. It's going to be a crypto.
Do you deliberately avoid investing in Bitcoin because you might see it as a conflict of interest? And
there is that too. So I didn't want to be doing a book tour and before every, thing on CNBC, I'm going to say, oh, by the way, I own Bitcoin. That's why I'm talking about Bitcoin.
Right.
I think it definitely takes something away from the storyteller if he's financially invested in what he's trying to sell. And it's fine if people do that and they're open about it. I get it. You know, there's a reason to do that. But that's not what I do. I'm a storyteller, and that's my, you know, bread and butter is telling these stories. It's not, listen, I'd love to get, you know, be a billionaire. It would be awesome. But for the moment, I'm friends to billionaires. You know, I write about billionaires, and that's always been my beat.
I want to ask you about that because, I mean, even for the first couple chapters that I read through, you have a very unique storytelling style. And Joel and I come from the social marketing world, actually digital marketing. We've been doing digital marketing stuff for each 20 plus years. But storytelling is such a unique skill set. And now all the rage is content marketing and having great content and being a great storyteller. So maybe what are some of your, what is your origin story for becoming a great storyteller? Because I was reading your book, like this is a nonfiction account that seemed like I was reading something from John Grisham type. It was very engaging. Your writing style is amazing. Where did you get these chops, and what is some of your process in going through and creating this type of content?
Yeah, so I mean, I started out writing fiction. I actually wrote 6 books before I fell into nonfiction. I never wanted to be a nonfiction writer, never intended to be a journalist of any sort. I wrote thrillers. I had a TV movie. I wrote for the X-Files. So I was always this kind of thriller writer. And then I ran into the MIT blackjack team. I ran into a group of guys who had tons of money, who were going to Vegas every weekend. I live in Boston. So I started going to Vegas with them every weekend, and I became a part of the MIT blackjack team. I was blown away by this story. So I wrote what became Bringing Down the House and the movie 21. And it was this incredible, wild story of these kids who made $6 million beating the casinos using math. And that turned me into this nonfiction writer. I wrote it as a thriller, narrative nonfiction. So I kind of charted my own path in nonfiction. And then everybody started to send me stories. And I would just get these emails, and, you know, it was pre-Twitter, but now it's through Twitter or Instagram, people pitching me stories every day. And that's how I came into the Accidental Billionaires, really. I was 2 a.m. sitting at home, and I get a weird email, and it said, my best friend founded Facebook and no one's ever heard of him. And I go out to a local bar, and in walks Eduardo Saverin, you know, like the movie character that Andrew Garfield played. And he sits down and he just says, Mark Zuckerberg f***ed me. It was the beginning of this conversation. And I said, tell me more. And he proceeded to tell me this crazy story. And that became The Social Network. So I never really set out to be a nonfiction writer. I set out to be a novelist. But I fell into nonfiction, and that became my most successful book, Bringing Down the House. And it led me into this world. And so I've written 20 of these. I mean, I've written a lot of these, you know, about UFOs and about the oil industry and about, you know, I've written so many that I don't even remember what I've written about at this point. And so it became very natural for me to write nonfiction in this style. But to be fair, there are a lot of critics out there who do not like the way I write nonfiction. The New York Times has come after me again and again and again. Right, exactly. I mean, they feel that I'm writing fiction, or that this isn't a pure way to tell a true story, which I disagree with entirely. I think you can tell a true story, but make it exciting and make it a thriller, as long as the beats are there and it is a true story, and the people themselves read it and say, this is what happened. That's what matters. And I think that's what I try and do.
Was that like a new genre, that narrative nonfiction? Did that exist before you started creating these books?
You know, I think that I'm responsible for a lot of it.
It's
you know,
really
Hunter S.
good.
Thompson did something. Yeah. He went off in a direction, you know, pretty crazy. There were a few big books that were like this, but I do think I really created the sort of.
So you're kind of you're Gonzo-ish.
I think I'm Gonzo-ish, but I think what I've done is something that a lot of people have been doing since, which I think is great. You know, there's a lot of great books.
Awesome. Congrats on that.
Now.
That's beautiful.
I've been doing it a long time, and when I started doing it was a lot more controversial than it is today. Now, you know, the newspapers make so much up now that it's not, you know, that discussion has changed dramatically.
It's actually news fiction.
You know, I think it's a lot worse when a newspaper, you know, I don't claim to be a journalist of the form that should write for a newspaper. I feel that what I'm telling is a story that is true, as opposed to a report on something that just happened. Because
it's like something you'd read in like the New Yorker or something, like one of those nice magazines where it's like a nice long form story.
Yeah, Bitcoin Billionaires is excerpted in Vanity Fair last month. So it was the cover excerpt in Vanity Fair. I do think they do, you know, there's some great great pieces of narrative nonfiction appearing in things like that, which is awesome. And so, yeah, I think it's a fun way to tell a true story. It reaches a much broader audience and younger people. I mean, there's a generational thing going on where people over a certain age have trouble with this sort of book. People under a certain age. I've always written for 20 somethings and 30 somethings, you know, and guys mostly. I wish I had a broader female audience, but the majority of people who've read my books are usually 20 something year old guys, which is great. And, cause it's hard to get a 20 something year old guy to read anything. You know, most guys read maybe one book a year at most. If
And Playboy for the the stories.
So I think it's been an interesting, and it's been a challenge. A book like Bitcoin Billionaires is much more challenging, say, than writing something that would appear on Oprah. But it's what I do, and I think it's fun, and it's a good way to tell a true story.
Well, and you know, you've clearly gone Hollywood. Yeah. You sold the manuscript for the story.
So every one of my books is sold as a movie before I write it as a book. So in fact, the last 10 books of mine, I write a treatment. So it's usually 8 to 10 page treatment on what the book is going to be. I sell that to a studio, and then I go and write the book. So the story will have a longer life than just a book. The goal is always some big movie book situation.
So the studios purchased the rights to Bitcoin Billionaires.
Well, Bitcoin Billionaires is a little bit different. I haven't announced what's going on, but it is a project that is fully ready to go, and it will be.
Oh, that's going to be good.
Yes.
Now that'll be interesting to bring to the big screen as well. I think your next book should be I Fart Billionaire. You know, the story of, well, actually I Fart Millionaire, but we've had over 1 billion downloads or something like that. Billion fart sounds made.
I like that.
So that could be huge, high drama. I want to know, when you do these films, are you a consultant on the set? And did Kevin Spacey make any weird sexual advances on you?
So I am involved on the set, and I'm there the whole time and everything like that. You know, the author is like the least responsible for anything guy on a movie set. Like, you do nothing. You hang around with the actors, you get drunk at the bar. They don't really want you to do anything. But Kevin and I, you know, listen, I worked on a number of projects with Kevin. In 21, he was one of the producers on The Social Network. I got to know Kevin very well. And with me, he was always a perfect gentleman. He was great. You know, you definitely knew Kevin was out there. I mean, he was out there. There were no secrets around Kevin Spacey.
Wait. More on that, please.
Listen, everyone who worked with Kevin Spacey on a movie set knew that Kevin was flirtatious. I mean, he's a flirtatious guy. You didn't know other details that have come out later. But to me, he was a great, you know, supporter of my work and you know, took my first project and made it into a movie. So I really have nothing bad to say about Kevin. He's an incredible actor. He just has some demons, some really deep demons that he succumbed to and apparently did some horrible things. And so, you know, I will say my interactions with Hollywood, I don't think Kevin is necessarily an aberration. I think that a lot of Hollywood is full of a lot of people that you wouldn't necessarily want to have to dinner in your house, right? I mean, you have to work with a lot of people who, if you really knew what was going on in their world, you would be disturbed.
I'd have Harrison Ford to dinner. I hope that he wouldn't be a jackass.
Well, I don't know Harrison Ford. I have no idea. I think the work is incredible, what these people do, and that's what I look at. You know, you try to make movies with the best actors you can find and the best director you can find and the best writers you can find. And everything else about them I really don't want to know. And that's the goal. And hopefully you work with people that you really like. And I've been very lucky. The 2 movies that have been made have been incredible movies with incredible actors, and both of them have been major successes. So that's the goal every time you go out there, and everything else that kind of happens. But that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. I think we also, you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't say that you were the only nonfiction author to have 2 #1 box office movie adaptations, and you're the sexiest author on People's Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive list.
That was a long time ago. That was Jude Law was on the cover, which dates it. So you can tell that was a long time ago.
I was the sexiest author back in 1972. That's really good.
Exactly. And you have to remember the author is the easiest category to get into. I mean, you're competing with Stephen King and so
You don't
you're
got to
not
be that
expecting
sexy to
Stephen
be on
King.
that list. That's good.
Yeah, I think you're in a lot of trouble if you're not anywhere near that list. Two number one movies, which is great. I think the relationship with Hollywood is a big part of my career. I really believe that people consume stories now differently. Books are not what they were, 20 years ago. People want to watch things, and we're in a golden age of television right now, and that's how people are consuming things now. It's great. However people want to get their stories is fine with me.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about the Winklevoss twins because, it is such an interesting story. Maybe talk about, because I know that a lot of people who listen, they might know the story, they might not know. So talk about the settlement that they got from Facebook and then how they spun that up with Bitcoin.
Yeah, so they ended up getting $65 million from Facebook in a settlement. However, they took it in stock because they really believed that they were founders of this company. So that was a brilliant move. And they ended up with close to $500 million post IPO.
Oh, nice.
But then they couldn't invest it. They wanted to become VCs in Silicon Valley, but nobody would touch their money because everyone's end game is to sell their company to Facebook. And because Zuckerberg hates the twins so much, nobody would touch Winklevoss money. So they went to Ibiza to party, and they were on the beach at the Blue Marlin, which is a club there. And a guy walked up to them and said, "Have you guys ever heard of Bitcoin?" And they hadn't at the time, being men of Harvard and not knowing about this whole crypto underground world. They looked at it and they decided, this is either the next big thing or it's bullshit. And they took a bet, and they ended up buying 1% of all Bitcoin. And it was averaging in a price between $7 and $10 a coin.
So they bought 210,000 Bitcoin.
Something like that. That was what they did. Then they also invested in Charlie Shrem's company, BitInstant. Them and Roger were the first investors in that company. They invested about $1.5 million in that company eventually. And that was their two big, first initial moves into Bitcoin. Obviously, buying it, in the $10 range, they've made an immense fortune on Bitcoin. But when you say that, what you're not thinking about is the fact that they held it not just at $10, but at $100, and they held it at $1,000, and they held it at $10,000, and they held it at $20,000, and then they held it all the way back down to $3,000, and now they hold it at $12,000. And when people say, "Oh, I wish I'd bought it at $10," I would have bought it at $10 and sold it at $20. I would never have held it to $20,000. Most people don't have the ability to do that, or the belief. No matter how much you believe, do you hold it at that much of a run up? So that's really incredible to me. And that speaks to who they are and what they believe is happening. And then they went even farther, and they became a part of, the spokesman for Bitcoin in a lot of ways. They started traveling around the world, talking to everyone in finance, to tell them to get into Bitcoin. And that's part of what the book is about. Them talking to Richard Branson, them talking to every hedge fund billionaire you can think of, talking to rock stars, talking to anybody who would listen about why this was the next big thing. And I think, to their credit, that's what really makes them part of this revolution. Not just
Did you ask if they ever met with Trump? Have they talked to him?
We're working on that. I think they're trying to get to Trump now. They didn't ever pitch it to Trump yet. So that's something that would be interesting. I want to get the book to Trump in a bad way, because I feel like he has a misunderstanding. But then again, I think there's reasons why he should be against Bitcoin, in the position he's in now. But I think there's also a misunderstanding and lumping Bitcoin with Libra in a way that isn't necessary. If you look at Bitcoin as gold, it's not threatening to the U.S. government or to governmental systems.
Libra could be catastrophic for them if, they got 2 billion people. They're their own. That's like larger than every country in the world, pretty much every country in the world. And, the amount of influence, like if that becomes a big monetary system, that does impact the U.S. dollar.
100%. Libra is a threat to governments, but in a way that Bitcoin isn't. Bitcoin has been framed as a threat to governments by the people who initially were the libertarian voices behind it. But the reality is, if Bitcoin is a store of value, Bitcoin is not a threat. And I think that's something that Trump doesn't yet know, maybe. And I agree with him that it comes from a world of drug dealers and it comes from a world of criminals, but that's not where it is today. And I think that's something that if my book, if any of your listeners have an in to Trump, my book got to him. I think that might change. And it's an audiobook, so he can listen to it if he doesn't want to read
I
it.
got to tell you, Ben, I don't read books. I only look at the pictures.
Well,
I want to reference one more story you tell of the Winklevi in the book, and that is the reverse bank heist, how they have secured their crypto. Can you kind of just talk about that a little bit?
yeah, it's a really cool scene. So basically, they get their Bitcoin. They've got billions in it, right? And they print it out on pieces of paper. They cut the pieces of paper into little pieces, and then they travel across the middle of the country getting safety deposit box in little dinky banks. So their Bitcoin is actually held in a bunch of different safety deposit box in banks all across the Midwest of the United States. So it's impossible to rob them without robbing 10 banks. And I call it a reverse heist because they're essentially putting $1 billion into a bunch of banks rather than stealing it out. And it's really wild to think that in some of these banks, there's a safety deposit box which holds a piece of a fortune worth more than the entire bank. It's cool. That's what they do. And then they get back to New York, and it gets even crazier. They take all of the computer equipment, even the routers they use, the keyboards, the printers that they use to print out their Bitcoin, and they take sledgehammers and just shatter it all into nothingness. And
It's like the scene from Office Space.
Right. It's the Office Space scene. They've got the music going. They got the goggles on. And they just completely destroy all these computer pieces so that no one could ever trace it and figure out what they had done.
Well, the proof that you are a really great storyteller comes as I'm reading this, and there's the one scene where the brothers are going through, airport security, and they're sweating bullets internally, just carrying these pieces of paper in an envelope, right? As though somehow that's going to get seized and that their fortune's going to get taken from them.
Yeah, it's a vivid scene, and I think it's going to make a great movie scene with Armie Hammer. That's the goal. But I mean, it really is. It's visceral. When you walk around with your Bitcoin, as they've described it to me, the fact that you're carrying your vault of gold with you is pretty intense, and that's what separates Bitcoin, I think, from other cryptocurrencies.
I actually had that experience. I remember I was telling Mr. Joel Comm, it's like I had some gold coins, and I sold the gold coins to a dealer here, and then he wrote me a check, and then the check ended up bouncing. So I went back, had to get another check from the guy. I was like, seriously, you've been in business 20-something years, your check bounces? What the hell? So then I have to go to his bank and cash it, and then I just have like $5,000 in cash, and I'm like, now I'm driving to my bank, and I'm going, gotta have $5,000 in cash here. You get robbed $5,000 in cash, and then you think, well, geez, how much, people who have a lot of money sitting in crypto on their phones or, on their computer. And, it's like, you got to get that stuff off. You got to be more like the Winklevi and put them in different places and diversify your crypto. But it's like, it's that feeling of like, even though it's only $5,000, like this is kind of crazy holding this much money right here.
Yeah. When I used to, be with the Vegas team and you carried tons of money with you, you always thought, what's the amount of money that someone would stab me for?
Yeah.
That was always that thought. It's like, what is that number? Is it $5,000? Is it $2,000?
Probably a couple $100, like $48. Like somebody will stab you for that.
It's really that thought. But yeah,
no, they'll stab you for your shoes, though. That's what if you're wearing your Bitcoin, right? They can tell you're holding something of value. That's when you're in trouble.
All right, let me ask you this then, as we're getting ready to wind down. What might be the expected sort of time frame for the book to become the movie? Is it in works now? Have they casted it? Like, where is the movie now? Because I think with the success you had with 21 and the success you had with the Facebook movie, this could be huge for crypto. Like, when might we see this?
Yeah, I think it will be huge for crypto. I think this will be, the Social Network part 2, basically. I mean, I foresee us making a big announcement about the movie end of the summer, early fall, and then be on producing it right away. So there's a lot of big elements already circling it. I think having Armie Hammer back to play the twins would be fantastic. I think that would be a goal. But
who would you cast as Charlie Shrem?
I got a list of people. Yeah. I love, Jonah Hill. I love the guy Jerry Ferrara, who played Turtle on Entourage. I think it would be a great Charlie. I got there's a lot of possibilities for Charlie.
How about Roger?
Roger is a good. Somebody just told me Topher Grace. So I've been pitched a lot of ideas for Roger. I don't know. I mean, it's fun to think about. The reality is, this comes down to someone else's decision. This is a director and a studio and the people who, as the author, you don't really, you get to see the list.
So we could see it potentially late 2020.
That would be, it's interesting. There's different periods when you want a movie.
That would be a perfect time because that's when, McAfee's going to have to eat his dick if it's not over $1 million. Bitcoin's not over $1 million.
That is an interesting, I do think it would be 2020. It would definitely come out in 2020. I think that's going to happen. I don't know what.
No, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
The book is Bitcoin Billionaires, available all the places that quality books are sold. The author, Ben Mezrich, benmezrich.com is the site. Follow him on Twitter. He's got the little verified Twitter mark there. Ben, I just followed you at Ben Mezrich. And thanks again for this, and good luck with the sales of the book and your future titles.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
That right there, that's what we call good stuff, Mr. Travis Wright.
You know what? I love it. It's the redemption story of the Winklevi and how they looked like jockey douchebags in the first movie about Facebook, the social network, and the nice redemption of them. And you really get inside their mind. It was really interesting when reading that book and then learning about, how their dad, Howard, was really big into entrepreneurship and how he, built these startups in Silicon Valley, and how Tyler and Cameron worked in the Silicon Valley, startup business before startups were even really a thing, and how, it's in their blood, and how, Silicon Valley shunned them. And then they ran into Charlie Shrem and some of the Bitcoin guys, and, their whole path was changed, and they started buying a ton of Bitcoin and became the first Bitcoin billionaires, which I don't know if they're still billionaires, or with Bitcoin price gone down, I don't know if they're still billionaires or not. Who knows how much Bitcoin they actually have. I heard don't they have like 1,000th of all Bitcoins or something?
It's
something crazy.
It's a percent of the supply that's pretty significant. So yeah, they're definitely down with it. And who's the douchebag now?
Right. Yeah. Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg is the douchebag's douchebag. He is now that
he's a total
Ben has seen the light. And again, get yourself a copy of this book. I read it in 3 days. I really, this is the first book that I could not put down in a long time. Bitcoin Billionaires. The link through our Amazon affiliate link is badco.in/Ben. That will take you there. And, we told Ben that we really would like to get either or both of the Winklevi on the show. So, hopefully maybe we'll get an introduction and finally be able to speak with one or both of them.
That's true. Yeah. I'd like to get Charlie Shrem on the show again now.
You just like to make all the Shrem jokes. That's why you want to.
Well, it's not just that. I want to do bong hits with Charlie Shrem. It sounded like he was cool when he was hanging out in the bakery.
Does that mean we want to have Roger on again too?
We can have Roger on again. I have no problems with that.
And Eric has said no to coming on the show. Eric Voorhees also featured in the story quite a bit. And there's a really nice nod to Ross Ulbrook, too, as you get to later in the book. But those are all the people that are really featured. And, as much as I enjoyed interviewing Roger and Charlie, I learned so much more about both of them from this book than I did from our interview, and it adds a whole new color and depth to who they are.
Go read the book, guys. I mean, pick up a book, put down your phone, read the book, and stay bad.
Yeah, read a book. God.
Who's bad?
The Bad Crypto Podcast is a production of Bad Crypto LLC. The content of the show, the videos, and the website is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any decisions as to finances, investing, trading, or anything else based on this information without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional financial advisor. Please understand that the trading of Bitcoins and alternative cryptocurrencies have potential risks involved. Anyone wishing to invest in any of the currencies or tokens mentioned on this podcast should first seek their own independent professional financial advisor.